Alright, what's up YouTube? We back with another video, and today we're watching famous Pokemon theories. Let's see how
When
many
I was younger, I would
get.
often fall down the rabbit
kinda
hole of
loud.
Pokemon conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Today, I wanted to take a look back at some of them, but through a modern, more analytical lens. Here are 12 of the most famous Pokemon theories, and whether I think they're legit. And I've saved the one that I am most convinced is real for last. This first theory is pretty dark, as many Pokemon theories are. This focuses on your rival in the Gen 1 and 3 Kanto games, whose official name is Blue. Throughout playthroughs in all the games but Yellow, anytime he adds a new Pokemon to his team, it ends up staying in his party all the way to the champion battle. Except for one. Blue has a Rattata in Cerulean City, which then becomes a Raticate before the battle on the SS Anne. But then he never uses it again, despite having Blue in his party the next two battles. The next place you see him is the Pokemon Tower.
Oh.
Where perished Pokemon are laid to rest.
It probably got cooked.
Seems to assume that the player is there because one of their Pokemon died. He battles and acts nonchalant, but what if it's a mask? What if he doesn't want to appear weak by showing grief? Grief for his dead Raticate. Some have even gone so far as to claim the battle on the SS Anne is what mortally wounded the Raticate. What if you killed your rival's Raticate? I'm labeling this theory as a maybe. On one hand, I highly doubt the writers would make it so the child player did something so horrible, even if by accident. Blue's insensitive attitude in a solemn place is probably just him being a jerk like usual. He could very well be in the tower just to catch Pokemon and nothing else. But on the other hand, it is weird that he stops using the Raticate. Of all the other rivals, only two others ditch Pokemon they used at one point. Bead and Hop. Bead became a fairy-type gym leader, so he had to stop using his psychic types, and Hop went through a whole character arc intentionally changing up his team. Blue is the only other one, so it is weird.
I know, that's crazy.
Maybe his Raticate
I didn't know that happened.
did die, just not by your hand. I do have to acknowledge Yellow version though, since it does kind of mess with this. While he does stop using Rattata like in the other games, it never evolves in Yellow. I don't know why. He also uses, then stops using a Fearow, so maybe he simply just wanted to replace them with stronger Pokemon. But still, there's enough here that I stand by my maybe. This next theory is one that, if you're old enough, you might have heard about on playgrounds back
talking about the
Gen
Mewtwo
1.
under
in
the
SS Anne Harbor, you can find
truck.
a lone
Not
truck
Mewtwo,
on a
Mew.
dock area only accessible with surf. This at first seems pretty mundane, but it's actually pretty surf progress to get
That's crazy. So I heard about
that
that killing one.
Like the whole game. So it's a fun.
Well, I didn't hear about the first one, but I definitely heard this.
This theory is nonsense. Tuesdays that will find cook unit
and that's an ad.
off your let's just get the game 5 the anime.
Okay.
Ta-ta! For this next theory, let's hop from the games to the anime. Isn't it weird how Ash never aged? He spent 25 years as the series protagonist,
Unlike his Mario
traveled
type flow.
all over the Pokemon world, and caught dozens of Pokemon, many of which evolved after a time. Yet, when the series ends and he proves himself the greatest trainer in the world, he's still a small boy. Why? Why, after all this time, is Ash still 10? This theory provides a dark explanation. In the very first episode of the anime, Ash is terribly injured. While being chased by a flock of
Spearow, this is the coma theory. Yep. That's why I was like, I wonder how many of these I already know.
Scientists working in the
Pokemon
mansion on
mainstream as hell.
cloned Mew, creating Mewtwo, but it was far too vicious. They failed to control it, it wrecked the mansion, and then fled to Cerulean Cave. But they couldn't have done that on their first try, right? There had to be unsuccessful cloning attempts before they created the ultra-powerful Mewtwo. What if they first made something weaker that shared more of Mew's attributes, like using a huge variety of moves or transforming into other Pokemon? Transforming.
The Ditto. Ditto's
Ditto.
the... And this one is the Ditto's the failed clone of Mew. It makes sense though.
They have a lot like to Pokemon than every harsh not for. This is a lore information to each other. They both have pointy ears.
And this is the theory that Gengar is a dead Clefable. Yeah.
City, there's each other, since men somewhat of a similar
They
vibe,
look
but
the same.
there's absolutely no lore tying them to each other. It's just a little fun. And even then, it's like not even that fun. There's way more fun ones. This next theory stems from a strange quote from the Vermilion City gym leader, Lieutenant Surge.
You're on a
He
roll.
says,
I didn't think I was gonna know these were gonna be
electric
so easy.
Pokemon saved me during the war. They zapped my enemies into paralysis. Excuse me? The war? What do you mean zapped your enemies? People? You zapped people? But you know, now that he mentions it, many of the adult males in Kanto are in gangs, either organized or not, and the only male authority figure in your hometown is Professor Oak. Neither you nor your rival have your dad around. Is Kanto a country recovering from a massive conflict? Was there a great Pokemon war that decimated the Kanto population? And Lieutenant Surge was one of the commanders that survived? Well, no, because Lieutenant Surge is not Cantonian. He's American? The fame checker in Fire Red and Leaf Green refers to him as the Lightning American and says he is rumored to have been a pilot while home in America. He used the electricity generated by Pokemon to power his plane. Hold on, America? Where is America? Unova? Alola? What? In reality, this is a side effect of the Pokemon world and the real world not being so explicitly separate back in the day. Another example is Mew being found in Guyana, South America in Gens 1 and 3, but deep in the jungle in Let's Go. But still, in official Pokemon material, Lieutenant Surge mentions a war, which means it happened. That's why this theory is a maybe and not nonsense. Lieutenant Surge did not fight in Kanto, like against invading Johto or something like that, but something happened somewhere. For this next theory, have you ever noticed how similar Venonat and Butterfree look?
Yes.
Red eyes, purple body, similarly shaped antenna,
Think it's
hands, and even long bunny-like feet. Odd, considering that they're completely disconnected evolutionarily. But what if they weren't meant to be? What if it's a mistake? Gen 1 is full of errors,
I don't think I've heard this one before.
Maybe this is another one. Maybe Butterfree and Venomoth were switched, meaning Venonat was originally supposed to become Butterfree and Metapod was supposed to become Venomoth. I personally think it's nonsense. Venonat is attracted by light at night, which is a very moth thing to do. And even if that was retconned after the error, that would be an enormously massive mistake and oversight to make, which I just highly doubt, even with all the errors of Gen 1, which are mostly just coding errors anyways. And besides, sometimes Pokemon just look similar. Look at Luvdisc and Alomomola. They are not connected at all, which is weird, but like it's intentional.
Yeah, because they're
As
both
for
hard.
why Venonat and Butterfree look similar, like I said with Gengar and Clefable, a lot of Gen 1 Pokemon share design similarities because you'd have one person make a ton of Pokemon. So some days they might have just been kind of tired and just like copied the antenna over from one to the other and just didn't really think about it.
That's real.
Or slapped a horn on a fish and called it a day. This next theory is similar
Seeking.
to the Ash Coma theory, but less depressing. Essentially, it's another way to explain why Ash doesn't age. Ho-Oh's Diamond Pearl Platinum Dex entry says, its feathers are in 7 colors. It is said that anyone seeing it is promised
trying to count 'em,
eternal
goddamn it.
happiness. Eternal, it is...
Is it? Okay, you got the 2 yellows, white, green, red. 1, 2, 2, 4, 5. Trying to figure out like the other 2. You got red, green, white, and then 2 yellows. Yeah, I don't.
Said that anyone seeing it is promised eternal happiness.
I don't know.
Eternal happiness is what matters here. What would make
Oh,
Ash
'cause
happy?
Ash seen it.
Adventuring with
Yeah.
and battling Pokemon. How do you do that eternally? Stop him from aging. In short, Ash made a wish on Ho-Oh. It is certainly less depressing than the coma theory and therefore
Yeah,
has
for
more
sure.
merit, but I'm still calling it nonsense. I can't help but think of Occam's razor. The simplest answer is the most likely one, and the simplest answer is that
Wait, what?
Ash's razor.
When faced with 2 opposing explanations for the same set of evidence, our minds will naturally prefer the explanation that makes the fewest assumptions. Yeah, it makes sense. I've
The
never actually
simplest
heard that
answer
being
is
used
the most
before.
likely one, And the simplest answer is that Ash just didn't age because they wanted a weekly episodic series as opposed to a single enclosed story, so they could maintain continual interest and print money, which they did for over 25 years.
Kind of like the Ben 10.
Focuses on the mythical Pokemon Genesect.
Because Ben 10 has like 3 series where he's like 16. And there's no way you tell me like those 200 episodes happened
pretty sick
within 1 year.
But Genesect is this new Pokemon's name. What was it before? What was the prehistoric Pokemon that became Genesect?
We do not know.
It could be one that we've never seen and never will.
Probably won't though.
Or it could be a Pokemon that we're already familiar with. This theory claims that Genesect was a Kabutops. There are 3 data points to support this, and then one potential
kinda see it.
First, they have similar body shapes, with any subtle differences explained by the technical modifications. Second, Genesect was feared as the strongest of hunters, and most of Kabutops' dex entries talk about its vicious hunting. Third, Genesect is said to have existed 300 million years ago. And while none of Kabutops' entries say exactly when it lived,
but it's a fossil Pokemon, so who knows?
Specifically say it lived 300 million years ago. They look alike, behave alike, and lived at the same time. But the hang-up is that Kabutops is not a bug type, and Genesect is explicitly stated to be an ancient bug Pokemon. But there is an explanation for this.
But how is that not a bug? Like, look at it,
Gen 8,
nigga.
Fossil Pokemon were always rock type. But for many, this seems to be because they were revived from a fossil, not because they have any rocky attributes. Like, look at Archeops. What about this has anything to do with rocks? So Kabuto and Kabutops could be rock type today just because they were revived from fossils, and then water type because they're aquatic. But 300 million years ago, they could have been water bug type because of Anorith and Armaldo. These prehistoric bug-type Pokemon are based on the Anomalocaris, a prehistoric arthropod. Kabuto is based on trilobites and horseshoe crabs, and Kabutops is based on
horseshoe crabs are so fucking creepy, bro.
All 3 of what I just mentioned are arthropods, as are crabs, and Dwebble and Crustle proved crabs are bugs. The bug type is basically the arthropod type. Plus, Kabutops learns X, Scissor, and Leech Life, the latter by level up, and it used to get Fury Cutter. So could Genesect's ancient form have been a water bug type Kabutops?
It might be like
I think it's legit. We'll never get full confirmation, but like there's just so much going for it that I'm comfortable believing it. Next is another Gen 5 related theory. Have you ever noticed how strong of a connection N and Zoroark have? They both have long, spiky ponytails, and N can understand
Now you're gonna tell me that
something
like
normally only Pokemon
it's
can
a sibling
do.
or something, or it used to be a human.
A Zoroark appears at times when you would expect N to. In Black 2 and White 2, players can use the memory link feature to connect a save file of Black
Which is
or
funny
White.
because I say Black
This
and White's like
unlocks
my
several features in the
second
sequel
favorite
games,
Pokemon
the
series.
most significant of which
Right
are
behind
flashbacks.
Diamond and
These
Pearl.
stories are normally all told by characters present for the events, but one flashback story is initiated by a Zoroark that does not appear in the flashback. Only 2 grunts and N do. Additionally, when delving into the ruins of Team Plasma's castle, a Zoroark guides you down into it, only for you to find N instead. Zoroark's whole thing is making illusions, and not just of Pokemon. It can absolutely disguise itself as a person. What if that's what's happening here? What if N isn't a person? What if N is a Zoroark? Some might say that Zoroark's inability to speak could ruin this, but I don't actually think that's true. In Lost Lorn Forest in the sequel games, you have a full conversation with a guy who ends up revealing himself to be a Zoroark. As for my thoughts, I'm giving it a weak maybe. I'll admit, it's weird. They're laying it on thick with this connection. It could be a very elaborate ruse, but I actually think there's a more likely explanation. The Zoroark
There's enough evidence that it could be possible, but I think knowing Pokemon, definitely not.
Alongside a Darmanitan, Woobat, and a Zorua, and rotates out the Pokemon he uses constantly, releasing Pokemon once they've helped him once. But maybe this particular Zorua, then Zoroark, formed quite an attachment to him.
Maybe that's his day one.
Thus has stuck around to help him out for longer than most. It participates in the climactic battle in Black and White, but then does its own thing, popping in to help out N when it sees fit. Maybe the backpacker in Lostlorn Forest is that exact same Zoroark. We'll never know for sure, but it is super weird how often we see Zoroark near N, despite the fact he only uses it in battle once. This next theory is a sad one. Cubone is a tragic Pokemon.
Oh, yeah, this is the
skull of its dead mother. But strangely, Cubone seems to have a significant connection to a seemingly unrelated Pokemon, aside from the fact that it's quite motherly.
Now this is the
Cubone and Kangaskhan are often found in the same place. In the Johto games and Let's Go, they're both in Rock Tunnel. In X and Y, they're both in Glittering Cave, and on the Isle of Armor, they're both in Warm-Up Tunnel. In Wayla Volcano Park, not only are they both there, but Cubone can SOS call a Kangaskhan to help it in battle. Now, Cubone doesn't really look much like Kangaskhan, at least not the mother. But look at the baby. This art here, the best official look we have at what Cubone looks like under the skull, does bear a resemblance to baby Kangaskhan. Additionally, you can never encounter a baby Kangaskhan separate from its mother. That's because the mother is extremely protective. But what if she dies? Does the baby die too? Or does it adapt? Forced to carry on alone, it takes its mother's skull, changes typing and species, and ends up evolving into a totally different Pokemon when its mother's skull fuses to its head. Maybe Cubone is an orphaned baby Kangaskhan. This seems pretty legit, but like Cubone's mother, I gotta punch some holes in it. I'm sorry, that was way too dark.
Yeah,
there is a huge problem with Cubone being a baby Kangaskhan. We've already met Cubone's mother, and it is not a Kangaskhan. The Pokemon Tower has Wild Cubone, and the ghost that you have to defeat to progress the story is a Marowak. Doesn't have a gender since no Pokemon did in Gen 1, but in Gen 3, the Marowak is explicitly female. It's clearly intended to be the slain mother of a Cubone that lives in the tower. Then in Let's Go, the cutscene makes it even more explicit that the Cubone your rival ends up adopting is the child of this dead Marowak. There's a tearful goodbye and everything. Then Pokemon Origins even shows the mother Marowak defending Cubone from Team Rocket before dying. Although the Cubone is already wearing the skull in this scene. Also, if you hatch a baby Cubone, it already is wearing the skull. Just like a baby Kangaskhan hatching with the baby already in the pouch. These Pokemon frankly have never made sense. As for why Cubone and Kangaskhan are so often found in the same place, I think it's simply Kangaskhan's maternal instincts. In Wayla Volcano Park, Kangaskhan hears a motherless Cubone literally crying for its mom, and it shows up to protect the baby. This theory is fun, but it's nonsense. Without question, Cubone's mothers are Marowaks, and they always have been. It's time for the final theory of the video. The one I believe to be the most legit famous theory. And its story starts in Johto. 150 years before the events of the Johto games, lightning struck the Brass Tower, igniting it. This caused Lugia to flee to the Whirl Islands, while Ho-Oh took off from the nearby Bell Tower. While no humans died during the catastrophe, 3 Pokemon tragically died in the blaze. The fire was soon put out by a sudden rainstorm, and Ho-Oh returned briefly to accomplish one task, reviving the fallen Pokemon as Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, representing the lightning strike, the fire itself, and the rain after. But what were the Pokemon that died? They weren't legendary before they died, so they had to just be regular old Pokemon. This all happened in Ecruteak City, so maybe they were Pokemon that were popular there, used by, I don't know, famous dancers, wearing kimonos. Raikou, Entei, and Suicune were Jolteon, Flareon, and Vaporeon. This works super well because of how much the evolutions have in common with their legendary counterparts. Obviously, the types already match, but it goes even deeper. All the beasts are cat-like, as are the evolutions. Jolteon and Raikou are both yellow with white manes. Flareon has a yellowish tuft on its forehead, and Entei has a yellow
Wait, are foxes cats or dogs? I think they are more cat-like. That's what I'm saying. Some of the evolutions look like dogs. That's what I'm saying. I'd say Raikou looks like a dog, not more. Maybe a lion.
Crest in the same place.
More like a dog.
Flareon also has the poofiest fur, and Entei is definitely the hairiest of the three. Vaporeon has 3 fins on its head, and Suicune's crest has 3 points.
It's like, I don't like cat. I don't. I'd have to look and see what Suicune actually look. I wouldn't say that.
And it's not just appearances. Jolteon and Raikou have very similar stat spreads, and both give 2 speed EVs. Flareon and Entei both have attack as one of their best stats, both giving 2 attack EVs. Vaporeon and Suicune don't match up as nicely, but both of them provide EVs only in bulk-related stats. Also, what's super crazy is the abilities. Jolteon's, Flareon's, and Vaporeon's regular abilities are Volt Absorb, Flash Fire, and Water Absorb, while the beasts all have pressure. Their hidden abilities are Volt Absorb, Flash Fire, and Water Absorb in Gens 5 and 6 only. They were never made available legitimately with those abilities. Which proves this theory is real! They're covering it up! It's a conspiracy! And
yeah, bro's funny. Bro's funny. Dang, man. See, this is what happens when you consume yourself in so much Pokemon. You know most of them. But no, this was a good video. Maybe I'll have to find one that's actually like left or right, because these were kind of mainstream. Or maybe I've consumed too much media. I don't know anymore. But I hope you guys liked the video, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.